Hello, and thank you. Yeah, I'm Tim Ward, CEO and co-founder of ThinkCyber. So many of you may have heard me talk about nudge theory before, and we're quite chuffed at ThinkCyber to have been the ones who brought the idea of using nudge theory into security awareness. But today I want to move on a little bit and talk a bit more about measurement. But first, a sort of an existential moment, like why do we bother sometimes? No, why do we bother with security awareness? What are we actually doing this for? So we need some sort of foundation. You do need to understand roughly what's going on in the world of cybersecurity, and I think generally people are becoming more cyber savvy. And we do need to build this foundation of skills and understanding and knowledge, because you do lean on that. And of course, we need compliance. But really, we're trying to do this to reduce operational risk. We need to change behaviours, we need to reduce our risk, and we need to find some way of measuring that we're really doing that. So to reduce operational risk, you've got to be changing behaviour. You can't just rely on building knowledge and understanding. And I'm going to explore the fact that actually what we're mostly measuring is whether we built the knowledge and understanding. We're not measuring whether we've actually reduced operational risk. So we've got to measure this. We've got to see if we're reducing operational risk. So why do we want to measure? Well, yeah, compliance. You do have to measure to prove you're doing something, but there's a lot more to measurement. So you want to be showing, like, is my security awareness doing something? Am I reaching people? Well, that's important. Are they then engaging? That's important. But are they changing their behaviours? Is it actually doing anything? Am I reducing risk? And also there's this kind of other element, of course. Am I doing my job well? Can I keep my job? Can I have more budget? Is quite important. And that is quite often why we are measuring things, we have to admit. So this brings us on to an important distinction that's actually made in some of the quality standards. This difference between measuring performance and measuring effect. What we're often stuck doing at the moment is measuring performance. How many people did my security awareness training? And how well did they do in the test? So we're not, that's kind of did they do it? What we're not really focusing enough on is proving we've had an effect. Is it really doing something? And the reason we're not doing that is it's actually much harder. So it's understandable. We're being a little bit lazy. We're measuring what we can measure. We're not measuring what really is going to make a difference. And it's hard. It's hard to make a link between this training course and people actually changing their behaviour. But what if you could have some stats like this? So some real changes in behaviour. So obviously got some things around like, are we changing behaviours in the phishing sims? But actually, look, this is real link clicks across real emails in the environment from unknown senders. Are we changing that? But it's not all about phishing. We talk far too much about phishing. What about, are people leaving their screens unlocked? Are they uploading or downloading data? So if we're trying to do that, then we actually need to be thinking about changing behaviours. And so we need to think about what it means to change behaviours. And this is where I think we've been going wrong in the industry. So the traditional training relies on this very simplistic model of behaviour, that we have this bank of knowledge, skills and understanding. That's going to impact our intention to behave in a particular way, and that leads to behaviour. Well, unfortunately, a lot of the time behaviour doesn't work like that. So the first one, context matters. Some interesting research from Carlson was looking at why do or don't people follow policies? And all those things were in place. They had the knowledge, the skills and understanding. The intention was there, but people weren't following policy. Well, because the context of the organisation was actually delivery matters. We don't really care if you follow our policies. We just want you to deliver at all costs. But then we've got some of the psychology, which obviously Holly started to talk about earlier. We don't make decisions in this deliberative way we might like to think. Sometimes we're acting very rapidly and making quick decisions, and that's where these cognitive biases come in, and we make mistakes for that way. But also, if you act in a habitual way, basically the psychology of this is you don't refer to your executive function. You're not going back to that knowledge bank and your skills, you're just acting by habit. So if you're a habitual clicker, in that you process your inbox very quickly, just like, click, 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 then you are going to click on links. And not a lot is going to stop you doing that because it's a habit. And this is where these mental shortcuts come in. So we like to think that actually we're all really deliberate in the way that we make our decisions and that we plan our days. But the reality is that only about 5% of the decisions we make each day are deliberate. Most of the time, we are acting on heuristics. And interesting, some of the research is saying now that possibly nothing we do is deliberate. We always post-rationalise. So after the fact, we go, yeah, no, I did that because I thought it through and I did it for this reason. But most of the time, we are just reacting to our environment. And so these cognitive biases can be really impactful in the way that we behave. And the important point to make in this slide is that, one, the bad guys are using this, but two, we can use these ideas to make things better, to actually improve our awareness. So priming is a great one. You can steer what people think and what answer they'll give you, and Devin Brown does this in all of his events, but he can make you say something by priming you and you seeing things in and around the way you're working. We all respond to authority. We do what we're told quite often, and that's why marketeers use celebrities and men in white coats advertising toothpaste. Social proof, what are other people doing? That will influence our behaviour. We're also always, we're really scared of loss, and so we focus more on losing things than we do necessarily on gaining things. We don't think bad things will happen to us. And emotionally charged situations are we're really prone to act in that way. And then availability, like if something is familiar to us, if we've heard about something or if it rings true with something that is in the news, then we're more likely to take it on and listen to it. And you can see, and many of you will be picturing and say, yeah, I can see phishing simulations and phishing attacks, real attacks that use some of these ideas. So CEO fraud, the urgency, trying to manipulate you into acting quickly. And these really work. We respond to these things. So if we want to change behaviour for good, we need to step back even further and think about how the behavioural models really work. So one of my favourite models here is BJ Fogg. He's also got some great books on just generally habits and how to form good habits. And he says that for any behaviour to happen, there's got to be an element of motivation. You've got to want to do it. There's got to be ability. Can you do it? But really importantly, there's got to be some sort of trigger, some sort of prompt, something that actually makes you do it, almost a physical prod. And then the nudge unit. So this was built in part of the Cabinet Office, and they were applying nudge theory to how government could work. And they said the 4 components of an effective nudge were the EAST model. It's got to be easy. The behaviour you want people to do needs to be the easy behaviour. It's got to be attractive. You've got to want to do it. It's got to be social. So this is an element of motivation in the other model, but it's a really important one because we're social animals. We do what other people are doing. But again, timeliness matters. And this is really important because I think in the awareness industry, we've missed out on this element of timeliness. Most of what we do comes after the fact, and I'll explore that a bit. So in all the research that we did when we set up ThinkCyber, fairly fundamentally, the answer was that all behaviour takes place in a context. Not really that surprising, but that context for most of us is going to be on a computer. There's going to be some sort of trigger that results in an action. And we've been doing stuff in the wrong place. It's not in the context where the threat lies. Now, obviously, if it's once a year, mandatory training, it's definitely going to be forgotten in the incident that happens maybe 6 or 9 months later. But there's an argument that says it doesn't matter how good the videos are. Now, if they're good, your staff won't complain when you make them watch them. I mean, that's a positive, I suppose. But is it really going to change people's behaviour in the moment when all these cognitive biases are kicking in? And then, of course, we've been doing some stuff too late as well. So phishing sims, after the fact, you're tricking someone, you're delivering training. There's research that says delivering training at the point of failure, actually our ego just goes, la, 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 this isn't happening, I'm not interested. And you can see that by how long people hover on training after a phishing attack. But also there are tools looking at events in the SIEM. That's great, you understand what events have happened, but all you can really do is follow up after the fact and tell people off or nag them or punish them with training. So what we really want to be doing is priming them before the behaviour or intervening at exactly the point of behaviour, when someone's about to upload a file, when they're about to click a link. And obviously, if you can do this, you can do it silently and baseline that behaviour, and that's when you can start to measure and see some of those stats that I was showing you earlier. So let's dig into how we actually got some of those numbers. So you do have to build this foundation of knowledge. But you also have to do that in a way that's respectful of people's time, and sadly, other people don't come to work to do security awareness. Just break that to you all. And so you need to be respectful of that. And so what we like to do is drop really short snippets of content. Like our longest piece of content is 1 minute, 30 seconds. And it appears just on your desktop in the background. That seems a bit counterintuitive because it's behind everything. But actually, we get 80 to 90% engagement with this sort of content because it's just there on your device, hanging around, looks intriguing. We're all used to seeing things that says read time, only 45 seconds, which is what that says down there. And so people engage with it. So you lay that foundation, but then that idea of priming can come in. So as I open my inbox in the second week of this behaviour change campaign, maybe a little reminder that I've made slightly bigger so you can read it, that just says, look, we don't want you to get phished. And obviously we're being reminded in the context here, because we're going into our inbox. The research we did with Cardiff University demonstrated that just a simple nudge as people opened their inbox had a significant impact in whether they spotted phishing, because they were primed, it was in their brain, it was front of mind. What we're also doing here is warning people that they're about to start getting nudged, and it's going to look like this. And then there's even subtle things that go into the design of all of this, to Holly's point about UX. So this is a button, sort of. It's a link. It's not a very easy button to press, actually, but that's deliberate, because that means you're slightly longer on the page, because your default reaction when you get some sort of reminder like this is just click the big red OK button in the middle. So let's make that button just a little bit harder to click, because then people just have to engage with this page that little bit further. But then we want to really start nudging. Now, I hope no one in this room would click on this email, but if you were about to, the moment you're about to click the link, maybe a gentle little nudge that says, are you sure you want to do this? Do you really know this sender? And this is working on two levels. One is knocking you off your autopilot, so that kind of like, oh yeah, I do need to stop and think. And it makes me laugh a bit where we exhort people to stop and think. We tell them, you must stop and think. That's not how the brain works. You can't say, I'm going to remember to stop and think next time. It just doesn't work like that. You need something to help you stop and think. But also, if you're good at this, then actually this is just reinforcing that positive behavior, drawing your eye up to the email address you need to look at, which is overlaid. That red arrow is actually nudged as well. So we've got some of these here. We can reduce phishing sim rates. We can increase reporting. We're actually nudging people before they click a real link in an email. Let's look at some of these other behaviors. So let's go that step further. If I do decide to actually click on this link and then give away my credentials, then obviously we want to intervene here as well. So we're now on a web page. I started to type my password in, and we're just reminding people that, well, you did just click a link from someone you don't know, and now you are on a website you've never been to before. And that's that little opportunity. I don't know if you've spoken to people when they've done phishing simulations afterwards. Sometimes you're chatting to someone who's fallen for it, and they are in complete denial, so the learning's gone down well there. Complete denial, no, I didn't do that. And at one point I was saying that not only did you put your password on this web page, but you saved your credentials for next time you get phished. Brilliant. So here we're just trying to steer you away from that and nudge you so you don't lose your credentials. But of course, there is more to life than phishing. So this is slightly passive-aggressive, this little one. So after you get back to your screen, having not locked your screen, a little nudge like, oops, looks like you forgot to lock your screen, and then setting you up to succeed the next time. We can do this in a positive way as well. Positive nudging is quite nice. So if you do lock your screen, maybe a little nudge, say, well done, you locked your screen. You have to kind of manage the frequency of these. You don't want to do too many of them, and you just need to be subtle. But you can have the real impact. And really drive down people forgetting to lock their screens. And finally, uploads. I don't think this is the actual nudge we use because it's quite a generic nudge. What you'd want to do here is say something quite specific to the organization. So at this organization, we'd prefer you to use OneDrive, Microsoft obviously. We'd prefer you to use OneDrive to upload your files, and here's how. So not only are you in the context, you're giving people what they need to know. So protection and motivation theory talks about this idea that, yes, you can tell people about the threat, but you've also got to tell them about the coping mechanism. It's no good just telling people, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. What do you want them to do, and how? And of course, it's important that when you do this, people like it, and you make them happy. So it's very important to us to survey them and check, like, is this useful? Are you getting good results? This is an interesting stat that comes from Doc Martens. So Doc Martens' tagline is rebellious self-expression. Now, obviously, that means no one does mandatory security awareness training. So I said, look, I rebelliously self-express not to. It's okay. We've been there for about 3 years now, and we're getting 90% engagement with content month on month. So finally, my kind of summary of the world of security awareness. We thought it would be a good idea to bore people. I know this is slightly tongue-in-cheek. Then we thought it would be a great idea to trick people. There is a slight risk that we fall down into this concept where we've got all this data on behaviours from other tools, or with phishing simulations again, all we can really do is follow up after the fact and nag people. It's really important. That is not nudging. Nudging has to come before because it's about shaping the choice architecture in which you are going to make a decision. So this is what we need to be thinking about. How do we nudge people to change their behaviours? Of got 40 seconds to go through this, so that's fine. So look, the traditional approaches are relying on this idea that the knowledge and the skills and behaviour lead to behaviour change. And it does in a kind of more relaxed, if you go and do a course that you deliberately want to do, you learn something, you then imply that. But in the heat of the moment, this isn't really how behaviour works. Context drives insecure behaviours. Not all behaviour is rational. Quite a lot of it isn't. We take shortcuts because our brain is trying to cope with all this information thrown at it. And habits don't work this way either. The stronger the habit, the more likely you are to just act. So timeless and context are absolutely fundamental. We need to get into that context and try and help steer people to make good decisions. A very different way of doing security awareness. Thank you very much. We're at a stand out there if you want to ask any questions, but we haven't got time for that now. Thank you.